Unit 4, we can see signs of trouble in the United States by the end of the roaring 20s. And the 20s were a great time, a lot of fun, a lot of activities, a lot of cool things to do. But by the end of the 20s, we can see signs of trouble in the United States. By the end of the 20s, 50% of all American families earned less than $2,000 a year. Farmers, the farmers in the end of the 20s, their crop prices had dropped. Coal miners, boy, they weren't working as much as they were because oil replaced coal as the major source of energy, and so lots of people who were working in the coal mines, by the end of the 20s, they no longer were working in the coal mines. The fashions dictated less fabric. You know, we saw some of the dresses that the flappers wore, the shorter skirts, less fabric. And so in the textile industry, some people were losing their jobs. Unions had little power to help laid off workers when they did lose their jobs by the end of the 20s. Businesses held down worker wages, which meant there was less buying power. There was a decline in demand for products like cars, like appliances, like homes. Not as many people by the end of the 20s because some people had lost their jobs. They could no longer afford cars, homes, appliances. And so production began to slow down by the 1920s. More workers lost their jobs. American banks suffered when European nations failed to back money borrowed after World War I. The railroad industry declined during the 20s. Farm income declined 66% by the end of the 20s. New labor-saving machines eliminated whole classes of jobs during the 1920s. Real estate speculation zapped the nation's economic strength. The middle-class people often bought into fraudulent real estate opportunities promoted by unscrupulous agents. Boy, does that sound familiar. And so middle-class people lost lots of money in this manner. Businesses offered easy credit to stimulate sales. But then when people lost their jobs, they couldn't pay their bills, they couldn't pay back their debt, and this vicious cycle began. Kind of like it was a few years ago. You could make lots of money in the stock market. And they were doing something called buying on margin. Now what this meant, they really borrowed money that they never had. They borrowed money that they really couldn't even pay back. And they would go into the stock market, and when that stock price would increase, they would sell, and they would pay back the money they bought to purchase the stock, and then maybe buy more stock that way, buying on margin. And of course, the time came when lots of people were buying on margin, the stock market crashed, and they couldn't pay their debts back. In comes our next president, Herbert Hoover. Herbert Hoover was our 31st president. He was a Republican. He was president from 1929 to 1923. He truly was a rags to riches poster boy. He was an orphan by age 9, but he believed in hard work, he believed in education, and he graduated from Stanford, and he built an international mining empire, and by the age of 40, he was a millionaire. So from an orphan by age 9 to a millionaire by age 40. When he became president, Howard Taft, that former president that we studied back in Unit 3, who now is Chief Justice, would swear him in to the presidency. His nickname was the Great Engineer. While he was president, the first Motion Picture Academy presents these awards called the Oscars, or the Academy Awards. And so the very first Academy Awards takes place during his presidency. On March the 3rd, 1931, the Star-Spangled Banner is adopted as our national anthem. During his presidency, Amelia Earhart completes the first transatlantic solo flight by a woman. The 20th Amendment is ratified during his presidency. Now, he is the first president born west of the Mississippi. He is the first president to have a phone on his desk. During his presidency, Kodak introduces a 16mm color movie film. Remember, there's lots of problems with gangsters and in Chicago and on the East Coast because of moonshining and all that stuff. And the St. Valentine's Day Massacre occurs during his presidency when 6 notorious Chicago gangsters are machine gunned to death by a rival gang. The talking picture industry comes to the forefront. The silent movies are now pretty much gone during his presidency. The comic strip Blondie begins. In boxing, Max Schmeling wins the heavyweight championship, and Bobby Jones wins the Grand Slam of golf when he wins the British Open, the U.S. Amateur, the British Amateur, and the U.S. Open in the same year. Al Capone, that gangster, is thrown in jail for income tax evasion. During his presidency, Mrs. Hattie T. Caraway becomes the first woman